For the kids that are turning them in, they're loving it. They're loving getting the feedback. But
using Flipgrid for an assessment, I call it an assessment opportunity. I want you to submit a Flipgrid of you jump rope, do a trick, do something cool. If you happen, and we call it being an expert, if you're meeting a standard, if you happen to be an expert, show me that and I'll mark it down in my grade book. And
I get, 70%, but then you still have a bunch of kids that you haven't seen, which is, like Jamie said, better than zero.
That's where I feel like I'm really struggling, is helping the ones that are there and they're trying, but they need that.
We appreciate you putting yourself in that vulnerable spot, because it is true. That's a tough thing when you can see that kiddo needs help, and normally you'd run right over there and help that kiddo.
Welcome, physical educators. This is Thinking PE.
Because Phi-Ed is more than just fun and games.
I'm Stacy Nelson.
And I'm Jamie Seneca.
And it's our goal to dig deeper beyond the activities that make your class awesome.
So buckle up and join us on this journey.
Welcome to another edition of Thinking PE. Well, Jamie, what's on your mind? What are you thinking as far as PE is concerned today?
I'm going to tell you, we're creeping up pretty fast here on 1 year of this distance learning experience and COVID. And as I reflect back, what I've really been thinking is we've come a long ways. We really have. We've come from the beginning of COVID, where we furnished meaningful and quality activity-based lessons that the whole goal was to keep kids active, keep them moving. And we've definitely moved towards content-based and standards-based of teaching.
Absolutely. And
like you always say, put the E in physical education, put the education in physical education.
Yeah, and it feels like it's actually working. We're actually doing some of that. And many thought it was impossible. How in the world do you do PE on a computer? And along with that, it's forced us, the whole distance learning thing has forced us to look at grading differently, because we can't really do summative tests very well and very accurately and very fairly when you're at a distance. And it's forced us to shift from more summative type language and tests and assessments to more formative. And I think that language and that move is going to help us overall in the long run.
I like that word you use, fairly, because families and kids at home, there's such a wide gap of what's available. And so, yeah, to set a day today, we're going to assess jump rope. It was actually, not fair at all. I mean, may think of a better word, to be honest with you. And part of that, when it comes to teaching is that feedback part, to getting kids to standards, is providing feedback. And we're so used to in the gym playing with the kids, playing games and activities with the kids, seeing a kid that struggles or needs a little extra assistance and running over there and helping them, or giving somebody that's really excelling, coming up with a new challenge for them, or having them go help another student. And I think we've just found some creative ways to provide feedback, immediate feedback that kids thrive on. They love hearing, all those, even if it's good jobs or the simple ones, but it's that immediate feedback that we thrive on.
100% agree, for sure.
So, in this first section, when we talk this podcast, we're going to get some pretty great references of Karate Kid and Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. But along with all that, we're going to talk a lot about the content. What's been working. The caveat that it's been a struggle. There's no doubt it's been a struggle, but there are some things that have been working, and we really highlight those in this podcast. So let's listen to this first section.
As far as content, then, what have you found that you have been able to teach that fits into your normal standards, the normal outlines that you would have if they were in school? Or are you forced to just pretty much just keep them doing, just doing activities, not necessarily PE? Any thoughts on that?
for me, it goes back to the Flipgrid, being able to have the kids demonstrate skills.
Okay.
Either the cup stacking or skipping or galloping or whatever, where that's really hard to assess or look at in a Zoom meet.
Yeah.
When we do our skill development, it's introduction in kindergarten. In first grade, we're looking to see if we can get about half or more of our skills that we're looking at accomplished in a year. And by second grade, we want all of them or most of them accomplished.
Okay.
And so you're a first grader, it's not a big deal. But again, we're going to start over after Christmas looking at these skills again.
Right.
And so all those assignments that we've done are going to come up again. Make me a new assignment of you doing a skip, and let's see if it's better than it was at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Because you're supposed to be practicing according to Google Classroom so much on your own.
Right.
But we'll see how that works out by the end of the school year.
Yeah. Okay.
For the kids that are turning them in, they're loving it, you know, and they're loving getting the feedback.
How about Matt and Jennifer? Were you able to teach content, some specific skills and things you would have taught in the classroom? Or are you just kind of keeping the kids active, getting their heart rates up and getting them away from the computer?
Meaning
Keeping them
farther away
active.
from the computer, but in front of it.
Well, right. So that's why, but no, you're right though, Justin, because one thing that my aide and I had both noticed was that at the beginning of the year, when we were 100% virtual, we were getting, 10 to 15 kids showing up to the Zoom recess, and then it started to tail off. And we were thinking, you know what, a lot of these kids are probably taking that 15-minute break just to get away from the screen. So do we really want to do something to encourage them to spend more time in front of the screen? No. So what we did was develop a personal workout for the day and posted that to our Google Classroom and said, why don't you take some of these ideas, work on your own individual workout, and it doesn't have to be during this block of 15 minutes. Get that in so you've got the opportunity to exercise, to burn off some of that energy at some point during the day when it fits with the rest of your schedule.
Okay. So those primarily exercise and fitness and those type of activities, or are you able to hone in and do some skill development like a soccer kicking or a football
A
catch?
little bit. I mean, definitely want to encourage it, whether it's a rolling skill or a dribbling skill or striking with the foot. But there's very little follow-up just to see how well they advanced with it.
All right. How about you, Jennifer? Any?
Yeah, so what Matt was saying about them not being on the screen the whole time, that's why our district asked that we not keep them on the full 50 minutes. But then I had teachers who I would go into their Zoom, so they would want them on longer. So that's whenever I started offering them to stay. But we're trying to do our normal curriculum, and it's, if you guys can help me out, in January, we're supposed to do dribbling. And like everything else, I've been able to adapt. Like, we could toss with socks. When we did long striking implements, we could use a broom, we could use a wooden spoon, but I don't know how to do dribbling unless they have a ball that bounces. So if anybody, we can shadow dribble for a little bit, but that's not gonna,
Right.
anybody have any suggestions on that could help me out? Because that's my January lessons and I don't know what I'm doing on those.
I
Well,
would encourage
you
shadow
could-
dribbling for 50 minutes and then get back to us and let us know how it went.
You could also twist it in a way where when we think dribbling, automatically we think basketball dribbling, but you could transfer into soccer dribbling.
We've done foot dribbling. This is supposed to be
Yeah,
hand
done foot.
dribbling.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I threw in a lot of ball skills, just like, because you could use anything, and then the mimicking and the shadowing, but I don't know what to do on my lessons that they're supposed to do on their own. And I even had, when we were working, we were doing a tossing thing with trash bags or something. And I had a parent come in, like rip the bag out of the kid's hand and be like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's okay. It's okay that they're doing that. But, it may not have been okay if they're home at that time. And I think we forget that sometimes, that
Yeah.
even though we think, well, why can't they do that? There may be a reason,
Truthfully,
Yeah.
that's a tough one, to work dribbling without a ball that bounces.
Or I'm stuck. I keep thinking that our district we do like packet pickups for the classroom teachers, and they do art supplies and stuff. I keep thinking, like, can't we get a donation and do like a PE kit? You get a jump rope, you get a ball, you get even a trash bag, a Walmart bag or something that we could use. We're not doing grades. Whenever they started this year, they've taken away all grades for specialists. So PE, music, art, we're not doing any grades. So there's a part of me also, like what Justin was saying, we don't want to add stress to the parents or the kids. So if they, don't do it, it's not a big deal. We have seesaw lessons, and if they don't turn it in, it's.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm grading them, but I'm not overly concerned. Like, so this kid to get a 1 on my thing, he had a 12%
Okay.
for the stuff that, I mean, but I didn't turn that over as a grade to the parents. I just went, okay, how do I break this down? But we have to grade by standard, not by
Right.
what we give out. And so I ended up giving them, what was it? One was a behavior grade. And so I gave pretty much everybody a 3 because for the most part, they all do a really good job of behaving online. And then the other one that I had to pick one of 4 standards, I picked skill development because we had spent a lot of time on it. And he got a 1 because he had done 2 of 8 skills things for me. And he hadn't done the other ones.
Yeah.
But that was to that. I have to give them something. But I've had PE teachers that I've talked to that have said, oh, we're just going to give every kid a 3 in every category. We don't care. And then, so then that's that. Well, that's not correct either. So we have to find this balance. And so, hey, I think you're all behaving well. There's your 3. And then if you've turned in the stuff, I counted it as showing me something and gave the kid a passing grade. So like this kid only did 2 of 8. There was nothing to look at.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of done that with some of our other stuff. But like we have another one that we're supposed to grade by the end of the year, demonstrates and achieves a healthy endurance level. Holy crap. How am I supposed to do that over Zoom?
Right.
And I've told my principal, and he's been pretty good about it. He's like, yeah, we're not going to be overly concerned. Just give them something. And so I picked the 2 that I thought were the easiest for me to be able to have some idea of what they could do.
Yeah.
Here's you a crazy idea for basketball, for dribbling. It's not basketball, but dribbling is a rhythm. So if you can find something that makes them do a rhythm activity, that kind of plays itself into
I like
dribbling.
that. No, I like that. That's good. I can use that at least in my warm up. Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Olga, what do you see over in the Philippines? Are you able to teach content, or are you more focusing on just really keeping kids healthy during this pandemic?
Yeah, for now we do modules, so all of the instructions are there. We meet. I met my students once, but it's for orientation, and then they submit all of their requirements. Maybe if they need to submit some videos, so you really have to submit your videos doing some push-ups or maybe trunk curls, sort of things for the physical fitness and other activities. So just like Mom Jennifer is asking, how are you gonna assess those ones? For some, yes, they will submit their, for us, they will submit their videos and some other requirements like essays or other activities, sort of things like that. So we
Wonderful.
still have to do some assessments, and if they did not complete, they will not be given a grade. They will not be given a grade. So they really have to submit everything, every requirement given to them.
Do you get a high percentage of students that actually do the videos, like almost every kid or half the kids, or what level of engagement are you getting?
Yeah. They submit all. So every student will submit all. So it's fun watching them also doing their activities. You will really see how or where they're staying, because we are not really requiring them to buy things, because I told them that you really don't have to buy things if you didn't have the equipment. If you have cardboard boxes, why not? You don't use boxes, because especially now in our situation, we are not really allowed to go out because of the lockdown and those sort of things. So whatever equipment or materials that they have at home, they will use it. For example, if they do not have some dumbbells at home, they can use their maybe canned goods or maybe hollow blocks or maybe sand that they can use, whatever that they can use in order for them to do fitness activities, as long as they will move or do their activities. I really don't care, as long as they will do their
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's amazing that you get.
So Stacy, we just got done with a pretty good discussion here just about teaching content, and there has been a lot of positives, a lot of great ways to teach some of those standards that we're trying to hit on in a virtual setting.
Yeah, it's a very big compliment to the character of the characters of our profession. You know, these teachers, you give them a tough task, what some think is impossible. Some people just laugh at the square peg in the round hole type of a deal of how in the world are you going to do PE from a distance? You give them an impossible task and look, they figured it out. They made something work. And there's actually physical education being taught from a distance, even though many thought it was impossible.
You know, and that is the difference. We make a differentiation between content versus just activity. I think in the spring, you know, me personally, when we were first tasked with this distance learning, we came up with activities to keep the, you know, meaningful activities to keep the kids moving.
Yep.
And now we've started to insert some of that content, but I mean, I think we can make a fair argument. It's good, but you know, we'll go back to the premise. It's definitely not ideal.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to switch to this after we're done here and say, oh, why don't we just not have the kids come in anymore? Because it's not as good. It just simply falls short of what we were doing before. I think we'll switch back, maybe with some lessons learned, and even do what we were doing before better. But absolutely, I think you're right on that. We're going to talk very positively about what has been done, but with the caveat that it falls short of what our dreams and goals of being a PE teacher has always been.
Yeah, we're not here to make the argument that you got a piece of junk car. It's still better than having to ride a bike everywhere.
Okay,
So
that's
especially
good.
cross country.
Yeah, I like it.
But you know, so we go back to some of the highlights and let's talk. Jennifer really, you know,
Yeah.
one of the first things she was talking about was all the curriculum that she was able to teach, whether it was soccer or striking with short and long-handed implements, toss games with socks. So she really highlighted right away, you know, they made an effort. They were going to teach their regular curriculum right from the beginning.
Yeah, and she brought it up kind of as a struggle, like, oh, I can't do basketball. You know, got any ideas? Which I love that she asked that. But this whole podcast is around what works. And then she rattled off 5 or 6 things that, oh, we've already done this, and this. Like you mentioned, yeah, we covered soccer, we covered, you know, throwing, we covered long handle implements. I'm like, you stuck with your curriculum up to this point, and now you're just stuck on one little thing? That's pretty impressive, actually.
You know, and it was fun to put our brains together and start brainstorming some ideas. So knowing that some kids don't have a ball that they can bounce, how can you teach basketball? How can you teach dribbling in a virtual setting without a ball? You know, and some of those things came up where you're bouncing the Ziploc bag, you know, or shadow dribbling. And these are all great activities to get started. And then Justin came out with that idea to, you know, rhythm. Fast dribbling is a rhythm. So yeah, you can't assess dribbling through, you know, a rhythm activity. You can't rep it. But now when those kids come back to the gym, some of that stuff is a little more familiar and you're a little close to meeting that standard because of distance learning.
Yeah, that's a little bit of that Mr. Miyagi teaching.
Yeah.
We're gonna teach them rhythm. Yeah, rhythm is an essential part of what we teach anyways, but kids don't realize they're working on their dribbling skills in some ways. That's being improved by simply learning rhythms and getting their body into rhythms. And I mean, there's so much brain research that many of us have studied about a lot of those things, like, you know, doing crossover exercises where you're crossing from your right, you know, side of your brain to your left side of your brain actually helps with skipping, and skipping is directly correlated to, you know, to reading skills. And people kind of get kind of woo-woo on you when you talk as a phys ed teacher like that. Like, really, you're crossing over the body, you're doing these exercises to help a kid's reading? Studies show a direct correlation with this. And Justin, I love that he brought that up, that, hey, there's a direct correlation here between a rhythm in basketball and teaching rhythm. So I love that he connected that, because I was not there at all. My brain was not going that direction at all.
Mine neither. You know, and that's the great part of our community, whether it's a Thinking PE community on a podcast or the Twitter world, is if you're stuck on something, put yourself out there, and there's a lot of support, a lot of great ideas to draw from.
Yeah.
You know, and Olga really threw out some ideas there, no equipment at all. So she's going through teaching curriculum in the Philippines, where not only do kids not have equipment, they can't go get it. They're in a lockdown where you're not going to get equipment. So they're using boxes, they're using, she's teaching fitness stuff and they're using soup cans. She said, sand, fill up something with sand to make it heavier. And that, now we're doing fitness.
Yeah, I feel like I don't remember which Rocky movie that was where he went way out into the.
Oh, when he fights
way back.
the Russian.
Yeah, I mean
Is that Rocky
he's
III?
carrying. Yeah, he's carrying logs on his back. Where Ivan Dracoff, or is that his name? I don't remember. He's got all the technology stuff, but it works. I mean, obviously it's Hollywood there, but I mean it's the idea of.
Pretty sure that's based on a true story.
I'm sure it is. And if it's not, please don't tell me. Yeah. So anyway, I think we digressed there.
After
But
we finished getting blasted on Twitter because we didn't know if it was Rocky III or Rocky IV that he fights the Russian.
that's
But
right.
in this next section, we are going to talk about feedback, grading and feedback, specifically grading, whether it's a formative or a summative assessment, and providing students feedback in a virtual setting. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this next section on grading and feedback.
Well,
I would add, I kind of make a differentiation in the terminology between grading and assessment. When I do grades, that's their year long. Every trimester we have to submit some kind of a quote unquote a grade. Our assessments are year long. Our assessments focus on standard one of, is a kid meeting a standard? Can they skip? Can they gallop? Can they hop? So when I say
Right.
we do assessments, like we've been using Flipgrid for an assessment, I call it an assessment opportunity. I want you to submit a Flipgrid of you jump rope, do a trick, do something cool. If you happen to, we call it being an expert, if you're meeting a standard, if you happen to be an expert, show me that and I'll mark it down in my grade book. And I say that's a year long. And so far, may have assessed, 20, 25 kiddos, but I was talking with a colleague, 25 is better than 0.
right.
So
Yeah.
we've been able to assess 25 kids that normally we wouldn't have had a chance. Now, when they come back to school, then we'll continue as we do our jump ropes. We'll continue to assess them.
Our district has decided, and of course, it doesn't apply to high school per se, but pretty much for our entire district, no kid will fail this year. So like we have 2 kids that have not come to jack squat, haven't done next to nothing. One of their complaints is their internet was bad. So our district gave them a hotspot. They still don't show up. They're still moving at the end of this year to the next grade, no matter what grades they have.
Right.
We've talked a lot about that too, because how do you let them move on? But then again, you do have some of those weird circumstances, or maybe the kid really doesn't need to attend reading, whatever. I mean, maybe how do you hold them back when they don't need to be held back?
Yeah.
But I don't have to make those decisions.
And that's where I like we were talking earlier about assessment on skills. We put all of ours on that. It's a goal by, because I only see the kids once a week, the end of 2nd grade.
Right.
And so we end up having, and I've trained all my kindergarten teachers, so this is a good thing. They're going to get a really bad score in PE under skill development to begin with, because we want them to know what they've done. And we actually give them the rubrics with all the scores, and we now have a program that helps us track all those things that says, okay, yeah, your kindergartner passed 2 of the 16. And so that looks really bad, but then the teachers go, yeah, but we're looking for the end of 2nd grade, but we're introducing them, and they are easier to pass as kindergartners than that same test as 2nd grade. And so that test gets progressively harder.
Because even assignments I give, we have all our kids that have technology, but trying to get every kid engaged and actually to do the video, that's what I've run into. I get 70%, but then you still have a bunch of kids that you haven't seen, which is, like Jamie said, better than 0. But to try to get all the way up to 100%, it's been really difficult.
We do our class asynchronously because especially in our situation that, Mom, can we submit our requirements late because of there's no internet connection here, because of the typhoons, because we live in different places, with different provinces. So they're in their place, maybe they are affected with flood or maybe the typhoon, so they do not have internet connection, and maybe their electricity. So yes, it's okay as long as you will submit all of the requirements. It's okay as long as it's even though it's late. If you will have late submission, it's okay with me as long as you will still submit your requirement
Okay,
there.
cool. Jennifer, I was just curious, going back to what you were saying, you've done several units, you've done foot
Yeah.
dribbling and soccer. How did you feel about those units were you able to track? Would you feel like you were just kind of checking a box, or did you feel like you actually were teaching?
The sad thing is the kids who knew how to do it, I feel like they enjoyed it. They did it with me. The kids who struggled, I feel like I didn't help them at all. I mean, I gave the lesson, I showed them, I helped, but it's so hard when you can't be hands-on, and like over Zoom, you can't call out one student. So whenever you're correcting, like, don't forget to step, don't forget, you can't say, Stacy, don't forget to step, because then everybody heard that. So
Oh.
that's where I feel like I'm really struggling, is helping the ones that are there and they're trying, but they need that.
Yeah.
But
Well, and that's a really, we appreciate you putting yourself in that vulnerable spot, because it is true. That's a tough thing when, you can see that kiddo needs help, and normally you'd run right over there and help that kiddo.
Yep.
But now,
I have
Yeah.
I've had a couple of parents who I've emailed and just said, hey, I've noticed, whatever it was, striking. I mean, volleyball skills are so hard. And the parents like, well, can they Zoom with you a different time? And I did do like an individual Zoom with the parent
Wow.
there, because that made me nervous, but we did. And that was great. But that was one kid out of probably 30 that needed it.
So, all right, Stacy, we just got done with a good talk, focusing really on grading and feedback and the differentiation there. And I just think it's really important there to highlight when we start talking about how not every kid's going to get a good grade. No kid's going to fail. And truly what that is, that there is a differentiation, or there needs to be a shift in the thinking of how we're grading.
I agree. And we've been talking about this for years in Minnesota, at least. I don't know on a national scale or worldwide, but the phrase that comes to mind is this standards-based grading, or more even the term formative assessments versus summative assessments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we get into the idea that we shift more away from a grade and away from a summative assessment, like, okay, every kid's going to jump rope on this day at this time, you're going to find out if every kid can jump rope. I think Justin kind of mentioned that his curriculum loops, and so then does his assessments. And you watch a kid, and if at the beginning of a year, a kid can't pass a standard, technically they're not supposed to be able to. Those standards are usually based at the end of a second grade year. That second grader should be able to do such and such a activity. So if they can't jump rope at the beginning, then that's okay. Just mark down the kids that can. And then as the year goes by, when you loop back to that jump rope again, now you are looking more carefully at those kids that couldn't, and giving those kids some extra attention as you go. And I don't know, is that kind of what you were thinking when you brought this up?
Yeah, just take kindergarten, for instance. You have such a gap between a young kindergartner and an old kindergartner. There's a big
Yes.
gap between a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. That gap is huge. Drive a train through it.
Yeah.
And that kind of feeds into Justin's point there, where no kid's going to get a bad grade. Well, if the kids are trying their best, they're logging in and they're doing what they're supposed, they're going to get a good grade. Now, that doesn't mean that they're passing their assessment. That doesn't mean they're passing their standard. And you brought up those terms like progressing or yet. When it comes to standards, you're not there yet.
Yes.
You're progressing towards meeting that.
And I think that's important, not only in the PE world of, between the teachers, but it's important to start changing that language in all of education towards an assessment is just showing where your kid's at. It's not putting a value on it. And when you use terms like yet, isn't meeting the standard yet, or is progressing towards the standard, or has met the standard, neither of those sounds terrible. Meeting the standard obviously sounds great. Progressing is also a positive term. And so if we can keep the language real positive, then it fits right into what Justin was saying. Nobody's failing. Of course not. We're here to help you progress and move forward. I think just the language we can start using can really make a difference in how well it's accepted.
You know, I like to talk about jump rope. I mean, it's a very clear written out standard in our Minnesota standards anyway. And I run anytime kids have jump ropes, I'm assessing. And I
Right.
know what that standard looks like for a second grade to master the second grade jump. So anytime I see a second grader jumping that, I can jot that down in my grade book. Well, it's the same thing virtually. If we're doing jump rope virtually, if I see a second grader meeting the standard, I can jot that down. I just ran an assessment. Granted, I only assessed one student that day, but that's why it's a year long. Now we do a flip grid. And the goal of the flip grid is just to create interaction. But as they turn in their flip grids, when I see a second grader again, or a third grader or whatever, meeting a standard, I jot that down. I just ran an assessment. And
Yeah.
to me, again, so when you say that word assess, we get out of that mentality where we're pulling the kid off to the side one at a time, assessing them, yes or no, did they meet that standard? And then we forget about it till the next time we have jump ropes. And it's just a shift in thinking.
Yeah, and when we've talked to people that have been on committees that have written standards, whether it's for PE or for any other unit, they often call PE teachers in because PE teachers do this so naturally every day. You walk into your gym and you're assessing every day, every moment almost of every day as you're walking around the gym. If you see somebody that is really way behind on a skill, they're going to jump out to you and you go over and help that kid. This is just a natural part of what we do. And so when we started talking about this formative assessments, I've heard, like I said, many people will, they want PE teachers on their committees because it just is such a natural part of what PE teachers do. I think we just don't give ourselves credit for the fact that, no, we're assessing constantly every day. And it just doesn't feel like it's not a big test where you line kids up and you waste a whole day. They're in the middle of a fun game and they're being assessed, but
Yep.
they don't know it and they don't need to know it. They're just having a ball. So.
Yeah, so let's chat a little bit about feedback, because a big part of helping students meet standards is providing that immediate feedback. And that's where we've, personally, where I found a big gap virtually is when I'm in the gym and I've got 25 kids and across the gym, I see somebody that needs help. I can dart over there and provide that immediate feedback and then dart back to the other side of the gym and help somebody else and play catch with this kid.
Yep.
And providing that immediate feedback. And that's become a challenge virtually.
It has. And that's where tools like Flipgrid have helped. We have found through the many teachers we've talked to, we have found that immediate feedback is a key to actually having kids improve and learn. And nothing right now, virtually nothing's replacing the live session, the live Google Meet or the live Zoom Meet, that type of a thing. Flipgrid's a nice close second where they're recording and you can provide the feedback, but we're finding the faster that feedback is, the more immediate, the better it is. So those live sessions together, at least we haven't done an exhaustive study. I want to let people know that, but we've talked to several teachers and they're kind of all saying the same thing, that if I have a Google Meet and I got even 15 people on there, I can do a lot of assessing, and in the midst of that assessment is your giving feedback to a student. Oh, step with the opposite foot, remember. You can immediately get that. And you can also do that through Flipgrid, but that delay isn't quite as good, but it's far better than them never getting the feedback.
Yeah, so we've seen feedback given in a Schoology setting, Google Classroom, Flipgrid. Matt had another. Do you remember what that one was?
I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
I've never used it.
No.
Right, so you keep looking that up, but so they've all these other platforms to provide feedback, which are great, but they're not as good as that immediate feedback from a live session. Now, I'll also go back and say that's not always a possibility. Your district may not have allocated specials time for those meetings, and there's internet connections. There's a number of obstacles that we have to overcome. So it's just like you need to provide feedback to students, and you find the best ways that you can do it.
Yeah, Padlet was Matt's deal. Padlet.
Thank you. And I was going to say, and all of this virtual feedback, to me, nothing replicates being over there to go over and physically help a student.
Yeah.
That's struggling, and that's really what we're trying to do.
Right. And Jennifer kind of mentioned that was the hole for her. Just, when she watches a video and you see some kid doing wrong and you can't reach out and correct, and I say correct, you can't reach out and give that feedback and help immediately. And you see them struggling and you just can't go and encourage and give that feedback that you want to give. It pains you, but we're here to talk about what's working. We're doing the best with the tools that we have. And I think the community has embraced these tools to make the best use of them. It's possible, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So Stacy, if we could just kind of wrap a bow around this, a little bit past the holiday season now, but to summarize this up, the first thing, we've come a long ways. We've come a long ways from providing activity-based lessons that were, meaningful activity-based lessons to keep kids active, to now actually teaching standards and curriculum.
Yeah. And I think point number 2 might be talking about that assessment, mentally shifting our language and our verbiage from summative more to formative assessments.
And finally, students thrive on feedback, and try to make that feedback immediate and live in a virtual setting. But if you can't, use all those other tools that we have available.
And that, Jamie, is Thinking PE.
Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at Thinking PE. Find us on all your favorite podcast providers by searching Thinking PE. For more resources and videos, go to www.thinkingpe.com. Thanks for listening.